Okay, welcome to the Project 4 video, which is basically Jerome's calculator. The item price is entered, and the subtotal is initially whatever you have accumulated. So, according to the book, you put in, what was the number? 1575, right? It calculates the sales tax based on 5%. Calculates the shipping based on $6.50 unless it's $100 or more, then they get free shipping. So there's a decision in there, and then the total due adds up everything, subtotal, sales tax, shipping, and all that. Then if you come up here and type in another item price, and they said, add $10 to it, then the subtotal gets bumped up to $25.75 because you've added $10 to it. Now, what you're doing here, you have to accumulate this, right? And then everything else is based on this. So what I have here is two buttons, a calculate button and an exit button. Make sure you put the ampersand in there the way they've got it so that the user has the Alt-C combination or Alt-X combination to exit. That's required on almost all the applications for people with disabilities, the government requires it. Okay, so there are two buttons. Here's my form. I've got a group box here, and to make it look like the one in the book, I just took the text property out of it, and it's just, 4 sides, so there's no text up there. Then I've got 8 labels inside of this. This labels that label, this labels that label, this labels that label, and this labels that label. Okay, that's the way that works. You got to have something describing to the user what's going to be going in here. There's another label. And this is the only text box on here. Now, one thing I'm noticing on your projects is a lot of you are doing really good on changing the object names, but you're not changing the form names. This is the form name file, or file name, okay? When you change that in VB, now it doesn't do this in all the other languages, when you do a rename here and change it from form 1 to form main, it will say, do you want to go through and update all references to this new name? You should be saying yes. And when you do that, it changes the object name, which is different than the file name. Notice the .vb. This is an object name to match, right? And so you need to do that, and then you need to, let's see where it's at here. Start position. It's better to put it in the center of the screen. So that's the property you need to get used to setting, and then a lot of you are just leaving form 1 up here. It needs to have an actual name in the caption that makes sense, okay? But you're doing good on the other stuff. So again, that document that I've got in Blackboard under student resources will help you a great deal with this. GRP is group data. I'm calling this one label subtotal and this one label out subtotal. Label sales tax, label out sales tax, out for output. And you can see how this is going. Label shipping, and then label out shipping, label, oop, I missed that one. Look at that. Let me fix that. Label total, and then this should be label out total. It is. I just missed that one. See, it's easy to do. That's why I do it all up front first. And but I did miss that one. Okay, this should be second nature to you right now. Another thing, too, is a lot of these projects I'm getting, the forms are way too big for the amount of controls on there, okay? There's a certain distance, and it's kind of just guessing. I mean, you'll get into knowing what it should be. And you try to keep it the same on all 4 sides if possible. It may not be, but, and, it's just an eye thing. You just have to get used to the spatial constraints of this. So anyway, all right, so we've described what we're doing and what this program is supposed to do, and you need to go ahead and pause the video and create your form and set all the properties. Do all that first before you ever start looking at coding anything. And you have to look at the description a couple of times. They tell you basically how to do it. All right, exit button's easy. It's me.close. That's just an easy thing. And let's look at the code behind the calculate button. Now, you're going to have some way to track that running total or the running item price, or subtotal, if you will. You can't put it in here because if you do that, if you declare it in here, as soon as all this code runs, it's going to set it back to, it's just going to disappear. So you'll never accumulate anything. So you'll need to declare this at class level, which is what I've done here. I've called it running subtotal as a double because this is dollars and cents. So it's got to have a decimal component. Initialize it to 00. So they type in a value right here and then they hit calculate. That runs this code. Now I've got a couple of constants here. That's your tax and your shipping. And I've got three doubles, sales tax, shipping, and total. Now what I'm doing is I'm updating the previous value stored in double running total, which is at class level scope. If it weren't at class level scope, it would just reinitialize to whatever you got in it every time and you wouldn't get anything. You just get one pass and that's it. Now what this is, if you haven't seen this, you will. It's called it's just a shorthand for like x equals x plus y. If that, well, it's not going to let me type something that's not defined. Hang on just a minute. Let's see. It's like doing it. It's like saying this. Double subtotal equals double subtotal plus something else. This. It's just a shorthand. This expands out to the same thing when the compiler is compiling it. That's all it is. It's just shorthand. Plus equals. You got minus equals. You got multiplication equals. You got division equals. You need to get used to using those. You're going to see them a lot. It just saves you some time, some keystrokes. That's just shorthand. It's called a binary operator, I think. Anyway, so I've got my three variables, my two constants, and I'm updating the running total. So what is the running total on the first pass? Well, it was declared as 0.0. So all you're saying here is take the 0.0, add that back to itself with 0 plus 0 is 0, and then add this to it and assign it over here. So you got 0 plus, what was it, 1575 in the book? So now I got 1575 in there, and if you run it again and go in and type a 10 up there, when this gets through, it's going to be 1575 equals 1575 plus 10. So it's going to do 2575, and it's going to overwrite the 1575. That's an assignment statement. You should be familiar with that. So that's just a running total, okay? And then I'm doing the sales tax calculation. Now, there's another caveat to this, and that is if the running total is at least $100 or 100 or more, then there's no shipping. So you need an if statement in here to deduce that. Is it greater than or equal to 100? If it is, shipping is 0. Else, shipping just is 650. So there's no multiplication there. The only caveat is it's either going to be 650 or it's going to be 0, depending on the running total. So that's an if statement condition, and then here I'm calculating the actual total, right? Just adding them all together, and then I'm taking these values, these variables, and formatting them as converting them to a string and throwing a currency format in there, and it will round it to 2 decimal places to the right of the decimal place. That's basically it. I've got a few comments, and there's really not much to this. You probably could have done this on your own. I just wanted to show you this situation here. In order to keep that in memory, you have to declare it outside of an event handler. You have to give it sort of a global scope. Now, when we get into classes, it'll be a different situation, but for now, this will do the trick. Okay? So let me put a breakpoint right here. Remember to use the breakpoints when you get lost. All right, so let's run it. Eventually it will pop up. All right, so there it is. And I think we said we're going to do 1575 is what the book stated, and you hit calculate. Now, if I go in here, well, let's go ahead and go to the break first. Just a minute, I have to go to breakpoint. Oh, what happened? Oh, there it is. Calculate. All right, it broke. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this running subtotal before this assignment takes place into my watch. All right, notice it's 0 because that's what we initialized at, to 0. Now, when it finishes this, it's going to add to that 0 1575. Okay, so I'm going to press F10. Notice what happened down here, 1575. Okay, and the sales tax, I could add that in. Let's see. And I can do shipping. Add that one in. And total, add that one in. Okay. All we're doing here, now remember that you have to go from text to a number and do all your number calculations, right? And then convert back from a number into text. That's what format's doing. It gives us the option of doing the dollar sign and 2 decimal places. And then assign that back into your label, whatever the name is, .text, because that's what it is. It's of type string. And format converts it to a string and puts a dollar sign on it. All right. So let's step through. There's my if. Well, 1575 is certainly less than 100, so it's going to go to the default side and just do the shipping constant. So $6.50. Now I'm doing my total, and I'm putting in all my output. And there it is. So now let me get this breakpoint out of here. Let's see if we add 10 back, what our subtotal what happens to our subtotal. It should be 2575, right? Oop, I did that. Yep, 2575, sales tax $1.29, 6. So now if I go in here and I put $95, my shipping should become 0 at that point. I should have free shipping because I'll have equal to or greater than $100 item price. And that's what it is. See that? That's really all there is to this. I mean, there's just not anything to this. Was a real easy one. So, and it says advanced in the book. I can't believe that. Anyway, the main thing is if I were to take this here, let me show you this real quick. If I were to take this and declare it in here. Whoops. Where are we at? Where's my cursor? Oh, there it is. As a dim. Okay. What would happen is every time this thing ran, it would just reset this back to 0 and it wouldn't change. I mean, it'd just be whatever it is. It wouldn't accumulate. Because once this code in here runs, that's the end of all these declarations. They're gone until it runs again. So you can't hold on to a value like that. You have to do it at a different level. And I'll show you. Let's just run it and see. All right, we said, book says 1575, calculate. All right, and then 10, watch what happens. It's not accumulating because it's recreating this every time this button is clicked. See, look at that. It's not doing anything. It's just doing it for a one-time deal. All right, so what we need to do then is put this back up here where it belongs at that level of scope. Okay, that's it. Now, by now you should be able to do basic controls, naming, and form design. It's not real complicated. Besides that, I've showed you what I did, and it's also in the book. Mine's a little bit different, but not totally. All right, there it is. Enjoy. See you next time.